Hello, this is Claus Jensen presenting Game 11 of the 2010 World Chess Championship match between Anand and Topalov. The standing is even, 5-5, and this is the last game for Anand with the white pieces. Topalov will play white on Tuesday. So, are we heading for a tiebreak with only 2 games to go, or do we see a decision today or on Tuesday? That's the big question. It's all very exciting. So, let's start today's game. Anand is white, and for the first time in the match we have a game without one d4, as Anand opens one c4 instead. e5 English opening, knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, knight c6, g3, d5, c takes d, knight takes d, and bishop g2, and now Anand is in fact playing the Sicilian dragon with reversed colors. Knight b6, castles, bishop e7, a3, castles, b4, bishop e6, d3, f6, knight e4, queen e8, making space for the rook going to d8 and planning the queen perhaps to h5 or f7. Knight c5 followed, bishop takes c5, b takes c5, and now this c5 pawn is a little isolated here because it's not so easy to play d4 to protect it with the pawn, because the Topalov has this pawn on e5. Knight d5, and now Anand plays a move that is not in my database. It's bishop b2, rook d8, queen c2, knight de7, rook a b1, bishop a2, rook has to go to c1, queen f7, bishop c3, rook d7, queen b2, rook b8, rook f to d1, bishop e6, rook d2, and h6 followed from Topalov here. And now Anand is going to do something about this c5 pawn, and what he decides to do in this position is that he says it's perhaps not a weakness, this c5 pawn, but it's not that easy to protect, as I spoke of just before. So Anand decides to provoke a b6 from Topalov, and this can be done by playing queen b1, knight d5, and then rook b2, putting pressure on this b pawn here. So b6 followed from Topalov, and then Anand can simply exchange this c5 pawn. He does. Bishop d2, rook d6, rook b to c2, and queen d7. And I think at this point Anand is having a very comfortable position with most of his pieces well placed. But how to improve the position further for Anand? I think it's not that easy to find a good plan, and Anand tried h4 in this position, but it's not that easy to see the point of that move. Rook d8, queen b5, knight d7, queen back to b2, bishop d5, bishop b4, knight takes b4, a takes b4, rook c6, b5, rook takes c2, rook takes c2, bishop e6, d4. And now e takes d4, rook d2 wins back the pawn after knight f5, and e4. Now the pawn cannot take en passant because it's pinned to the queen. So instead Topalov plays e4 here, and knight d2, queen takes, knight takes e4, queen takes b2, rook takes b2, king f7, e3. And I think now the g5 followed here, and Topalov has managed to convert the game to an endgame once again. And I think it has happened because Anand didn't have any useful plans in the middle game. It was hard for him to improve his position. So we have reached again an endgame which seems to be fairly balanced. The main imbalance is Topalov's pawn majority on the queen side. But that should of course not be sufficient advantage to actually win the game. But let's see what happens. H takes g5, h takes g5, f4. Anand wants to simplify, exchange some pawns on the king side. G takes, e takes, and now the pawn situation on the king side has been simplified, and it looks like we're heading for a certain draw. Rook d4, king f2, knight f5, bishop f3, bishop d5, and knight d2. After this pressure on the e4 knight, it has to move, and now Topalov can exchange the bishops. And rook a4, protecting the a7 pawn, and perhaps planning to attack the b5 pawn. But g4, knight d6, king g3, knight e4 check, king h4. And now it actually looks like Anand is also perhaps trying to squeeze out a win of this endgame, and I think it's still very interesting. Knight d6 follows, and now comes this very aggressive move from Anand. I think he plays rook d2. He doesn't care about this b5 pawn. He wants to activate his rook. So Topalov takes the pawn on b5, and then comes f5, rook e4, king h5, rook e3, knight h4, knight c3. And what looked a certain draw only a few moves ago is now a very interesting endgame because of Anand's rook d2, sacking the b5 pawn for rook activity. Rook d7 check, rook e7, rook d3. Of course, exchanging rooks would be instantly losing for Anand. Knight e4, knight g6. And if rook c7, then Anand would probably have played king h6 with the idea of rook d8 and rook f8 checkmate. So knight c5 followed instead from Topalov, rook a3, rook d7, rook e3, king g7, and g5. b5, Topalov starts moving his queenside pawns, knight f4, b4, and g6. And now Anand has created a protected pass pawn on the 6th rank. But it's difficult to see how to advance it further, because it's of course blocked now by the king, and the rook is also keeping some control. So it's not that easy to advance the pawn. So I think we can say that Anand has created counterplay to Topalov's dangerous queenside pawns, and that he has secured a draw this way. b3 followed, rook c3, rook d4, rook takes c5, rook takes f4, rook c7 check, king g8, rook b7, rook f3, rook b8 check, king g7, and the draw was agreed at this point. And again, a very interesting and very long game once again. Anand didn't get too much from the opening. I think Topalov steered the game into an even endgame because Anand lacked middle game ideas. Anand tried his best playing the endgame with a lot of risk, but at the end the draw was the logical outcome of yet another great game in a great chess match. So Tuesday, Topalov has what you could call a match ball with the white pieces in the 12th and the last game of the match with standard time controls. I hope you enjoyed this game, and I hope to see you on my blog at klausjensen.com. Bye bye for now.